This is a one-speaker meeting. Please welcome our speaker tonight, Cara.
Hi, my name's Cara, and I'm an alcoholic. Recovering from some laryngitis this weekend, so a little tough to talk. I want to thank Sean for asking me to share. I'm on his list. He's on my list. Every time we secretary, we just do the thing. And I want to thank Danny for introducing me. Danny's my first ex-husband. He's also my favorite ex-husband. And, doesn't say much for the other one, does it? I love Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, there is no other place for me to be. There is no other place I'd want to be. This is the last house on the block, and I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I love all you people. You've saved my life. I have a life today. I didn't have a life when I got here. I was okay. I'm 42 years old. I'll be 20 years sober next month. And I know I don't look it, huh? And but this is what staying clean for 20 years does. You know what I mean? What it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. It's really cool to be recorded. I'll tell you that. I actually feel like special. I started smoking pot when I was 12 years old. You know, drugs are a huge part of my story. In fact, I'm not much of a drinker because I'm a barfer, and it was much easier to eat a handful of Quaaludes. And I talk about Quaaludes. I love when people mention Quaaludes in meetings, because if you're under 40, you have no idea what they are. You know, if you're over 40, you've done them, you know it. You know, I've smoked them, I've snorted them, I've swallowed them. Ugh. So anyway, remember that in the hood? I got here, actually I started smoking pot when I was 12. I have 2 older brothers, so I had, you know, access to drugs in my teenage years. I started doing cocaine when I was 14. I started, I think I tried Quaaludes and Valium when I was 14 or 15. My best friend's father owned a pharmacy, and he was an addict, so there was shit everywhere in her house. And when I was 17, met the love of my life, Dan. And and Dan was a drug dealer. Yeah. No, there's a lot of sober history there too, as a matter of fact. I was 17. We met. We did a lot of cocaine. He used to ask me, and I share this at every meeting. He used to ask me, "You want a lewd?" I'd say, "Sure. Who wouldn't want a lewd?" He'd say, "Go ahead, they're in the freezer," and I'd open the freezer, and there were 10,000 Quaaludes in the freezer, you know, and this is, and they were roarers, okay, roarer 714s, all right, you know, chicks on lewds, right? Okay, so he's gone. Anyway, we did a lot of drugs, and we fought a lot. And, you know, we had a typical alcoholic, abusive relationship, you know what I mean? And there are way too many stories in that time to share. I'll share one with you. We were driving on Venice Boulevard. I'm from here. I grew up here. We were driving on Venice Boulevard in the pouring rain. I don't know if we were wasted. I don't know what the hell was going on, but we were fighting in this pickup truck driving in the pouring rain. And I have to admit, I grew up in a really abusive home, and I had the shit beaten out of me till I was 18 years old by my older brother, and consequently I became very abusive, and I was very abusive to him. And we were driving in the car down Venice in the pouring rain, and I was just wailing on him, and I remember he flipped me off, and I told him if he did it again I'd break his finger off. And he never flips his he never will flip me off again, I'll tell you that. He he laughed. He's a big guy. He laughed, you know, and he flipped me off again, and I grabbed his finger and I broke it. You know? I warned him. He does it from a distance now when he does. Anyway. I rarely get to share that. Now that he's here, I can share that. Anyway, what happened was I was 19 years old, and I was coming down from a 3-day run, and somehow I came in through Cocaine Anonymous, and somehow I'd heard of the phone lines, and I called up, and they suggested I go to a meeting, and I'll tell you something, I had nowhere else to be, nobody to be with, and nothing to do. So I went to a meeting, and I heard Danny T speak. The very first meeting I ever went to, I heard Danny T speak. And I'll tell you, I laughed. You know, that was what I remember. I remember laughing. You know, I remember I hadn't laughed in so long, and I was so lonely. And, you know, it wasn't about the relationship I was in or the drugs I was doing. I was so empty. I was so lonely. See, I have died a million deaths. I used to wake up every morning in my life and just die one more time. You know, I didn't want to kill myself. I just wanted to cease existing. And I was just, you know, I was an empty shell of a human being. I had no living skills. I didn't know how to feed myself. I barely could take a shower. And I just didn't know how to survive in life, you know. And so I went to this meeting, and I laughed, and I didn't hear anything. You know, I didn't hear fellowship. I didn't hear steps. I didn't hear sponsorship. The only thing I heard was keep coming back, you know. That fell on my ears. And I'd say I came back. About 3 months later, I came back. And again, I laughed. And again, I didn't hear anything except keep coming back. And that went on for about 1.5 years. And then I got fired from my job. And I used to sell my boss drugs. So, you know, that's pretty crappy if you get fired from the guy you sell coke to. So I thought, I was living in a house with 6 people in Playa del Rey. And it was a crazy, crazy place. People in the front were on crystal meth. People in the back, we were on lewds. I mean, it was just a crazy place to be. And you know what? I knew I had a problem. I couldn't. You know, I did the switching the beer for the wine, except I would do it with my drugs. You know, I lived at the top of this hill, and I would do my cocaine, and I would leave it there. I'd do one line because that's all I was going to do, and I'd leave it there, and I'd go down the hill to work. And you know, within a minute of being at work, I would. Oh, man, I forgot something at the house. So back up the hill I went, you know. Thought I was fooling people. And, you know, I realized I just couldn't stop. You know, I didn't have a problem with having a problem. I couldn't fucking stop using. You know, I couldn't stop doing cocaine. I couldn't stop doing Quaaludes. I just couldn't stop, and I couldn't function. You know, I couldn't. When your boss that you sell drugs to fires you, there's a problem there, you know. So I went to my mom, and I said, you know, I think I have a problem with drugs. And I'm 5'8", and I was about 107 pounds when I got sober, you know. And my parents thought I just had a little food problem. They didn't, you know, they're older and they're rather naive, and they didn't understand what was going on for me. And I knew that I needed to get some help. And what I did was I checked myself into this. It was really weird. It was the only time for many, many years that I'd ever had health insurance. It was a strange thing. And I checked myself into this hospital by my mom's house, into a treatment center, because I'd known of it from a girl that I'd grown up with. Her brother had been in like 40 treatment centers, and that was one that was close to the house. So I checked myself into the center, and you know, I didn't know if I was there for a real reason, or I didn't know if I was there just to escape everybody because everybody else was the problem. I didn't know what I was doing there. I just knew that I was being fed, I was sleeping, and I was safe, and nobody could get me. And I checked myself in. I remember I didn't tell Danny. I just kind of disappeared because I thought it would make him think, you know, how we alcoholic women work. This will show him. And so I went into this hospital, and you know, it was really interesting. I learned a couple of really important things within the first few days that I got there. I learned that that you don't die of feelings. I told you, I've been dying every day of my life. I'd open my eyes, and I died every day of my life. You know, and I believed that the feelings I felt were so huge, were so enormous, nobody could ever feel them the way I did, and that they were going to literally make my heart stop beating, and I was going to hit the floor at any given second. I really believed that. I really believed that I would die of the feelings I was having. And they told me, you know, you don't die of feelings. And, I mean, it was like the sun rose. You know, I realized, oh my God, I'm not going to hit the floor. And then they told me that I had a disease, and that it was my head. That, you know, and I thought I was crazy. But the thing is, I was so scared to let you know, or not you, but I was so scared to let the people that cared about me know that I thought I was crazy, because then they might do something about it, like stick me somewhere, lock me up, you know. And So when they told me that it was just my head, I was so relieved to know that I wasn't crazy. You know, it took me a while to understand the disease of alcoholism, but I realized that it was just my head. And I was so relieved to find these two facts. These are facts, you know. Feelings aren't facts. I don't know about that. To me, they're facts. If anybody tells you that, I don't fucking know if they're facts. To me, when I have a feeling, that's a fact going on in my body, okay? And about the fear and faith at the same time, you can argue it with me to the death, okay? I believe that I can have both of those feelings at the same time. So, you know, a lot of the phrases that are coined around here that aren't in the book, I wouldn't give them too much weight. I've been in fear and faith at the same time, and I believe that that's called courage. You know, I can have fear and keep on going forward. So anyway, I think I had a 28-day stay in this facility, and they made us do our first 3 steps. Now, honestly, I don't know what that meant. All I know is that they used to take us to the park. It was peak summer. They used to take us to the park a couple times a week to get some fresh air. And I remember sitting under a tree, and I remember that somebody on the unit there, one of the techs said to me, you know, your God can be whatever you want it to be. You can pick what you want your God to be like. And I thought that was really interesting, see, because my background, I'm born a Jew, raised Buddhist, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo Buddhist. I'm sure some of you in this room know what that is. And then my mother raised me in the metaphysical healing sense for years after that. So I didn't have an issue with God or a problem with God. I really thought that God just left me and he was there for everybody else and I was just on my own. But I didn't have a problem that there was a God. And so I was sitting at the park one day and I was under this tree and I looked up, and I'll tell you today that I don't believe that God is up. I think God is everywhere and everything. And God is everything or God is nothing, and I believe that God is everything. And I asked for a sign because they told me I could do that, and that sounded pretty groovy. So I asked for a sign, you know, and a beautiful August breeze blew by, and some leaves rustled and brushed my knee, and I thought about it for a second, and I just thought, no way, that's not good enough for me, you know what I mean? And I just thought, no way. So I suppose I did these first, second, and third steps. I can't really remember, but what was important for me was listening to somebody else do them. I had an amazing experience. I had a spiritual experience. I had my first spiritual experience, and I have to tell you that I'm of the white light variety and the educational variety, like it talks in the big book. I've had both experiences many times in sobriety, and something happened to me while I was listening to somebody else read their steps, and I can tell you that what happened was that the sun rose inside of me. I felt the sun rise inside of my chest, and I knew that I was going to be okay, and everything was just okay. Wasn't great, wasn't fucked up. It was just okay, and I don't think in my whole life I'd ever felt okay before in my own skin. I left that hospital, and I threw myself into the program. I threw myself into meetings. I threw myself into women's stags, so important. I hadn't had women friends, and I did not come into alcohol. I'm not one of those women who came into any program hating women, fearing women, any of that kind of stuff. I'm a girl's girl, and I love having a best friend to tell all my secrets to. And, you know, dressing like twins at dances, all that kind of crap. So I threw myself into Cocaine Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous, and, you know, I didn't miss a dance. I didn't miss a convention. I started living. I started having a really great time. And I still had this drug dealer boyfriend. And I didn't quite know, I didn't know what to do with him. And I kind of thought, you know, it's hard to let go of things, and I didn't know if I should keep him or if I should let him go. So I just kind of did, the only thing I thought to do was I dared him to get sober, and I dared him to get a job, and I dared him to get a sponsor and work the steps and go to meetings, because I didn't know what would happen. You know? Bastard got sober, he got a job, he worked the steps, he got a sponsor. Next thing I know, there's people sleeping on newcomers on our couches, people getting sober in our living room. I mean, it was just unbelievable. He was a pillar of sobriety. Oh, pissed me off. Didn't know what to do at that point. So I married him, and It's kind of funny, but it's, you know, we were going to be one of those couples that defy what happens around here. You know, we were going to hang on till there were claw marks in everything we did. And you know what? We got sober, and he got sober, and we had a great life. And we were, you know, we were doing the deal as best as we could. We were going to meetings. We were a supremely sober couple. We were very involved. We were doing all kinds of stuff, and really trying to work on our relationship and stay sober. And you know, things didn't work out. And he has quite the solemn look on his face. I have to tell you today, he's one of my best friends. I mean, I don't know how many people can say that every time they hang up the phone with their ex-spouse, they say, "I love you." That's how we are. We're tight, you know. I know he'd even get me pregnant if I wanted him to. So, it's a bonus, right? It's a bonus. Anyway, we have a great history, and we're very lucky. And you know what? That's what sobriety does. That's what working in steps does. That's what making amends does. That's what living clean and sober does. Is it gives you relationships that you never thought you'd have. You know. Anyway, our marriage ended, and what happened was I threw a backpack on and I took off, and I left the country, which is something I'd never done before. I'd never been anywhere. I'd never seen anything. And I went over to Europe with another sober friend who was over there, and I started living, you know. I actually, before I'd left, I'd started working the steps again, and I remember I was about 5 years sober, and I wanted to die. I just wanted to die. And a girlfriend pulled me aside after a women's stag meeting, and she said, "If you don't work the steps, you're gonna." Because I would share every week how I felt like I was gonna die, you know. And she said, "You got to do something about this." So I started to work the steps. And on the heels of a fifth step, I threw a backpack. My relationship ended. I threw a backpack on, and I went to Europe. And it was an amazing experience. And I sat there on the top of an island in Greece, and I watched the wind whip along the Aegean Sea. Now, that might sound like nothing to you guys, but that was God. That was so God to me. You know, I'd never seen another ocean except this one. You know, I'd never sat on the top of an island that was a volcano thousands of years ago. You know, I never stood in front of a 4,000-year-old, you know, unearthed excavation site that was a city. You know, I hadn't had all these experiences, and I realized when I was doing that this is why I got sober. I got sober to live. I got sober to have a life. And it was amazing. And it was an amazing spiritual experience for me. It was an amazing life experience for me, because I got to get in touch with who Cara really is. See, all I ever did was identify myself with the car I drove, the clothes I wore, the shoes and the purse I carried, the jewelry I had on, and how my hair looked. That I grew up here. You know, that's what we do. You know, I didn't have a self or a self-identity. I just identified with everybody else. And what I got to do is, you know, live out of a backpack with no makeup and no blow dryer and none of that crap, and 3 pairs of shorts and a sweatshirt and 3 T-shirts and 3 pairs of underwear for nearly a month, you know, and I got to be me. I got to be the real me. I got to find out who Cara was, and, you know, I only could have done that in sobriety. You know, I wanted to mention that I remember there were times when we would, you know, the tin foil on the windows and the tape, we used to tape the blinds closed so no light would get in. And I used to think that was a really sweet thing he was doing for me, because we'd been up for 3 days and I couldn't sleep. But, you know, I mean, that's where we come from. That's where I come from, you know, shoving the towel under the door so the light can't get in. And I was living. I was on some random island on another part of the planet. You know what I mean? It was an amazing experience. And I came back from that, and it had forever changed my life. And I have to tell you that once again, I worked the steps. I started over and did 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. See, I couldn't seem to get past 5. You know? It was easy to tell somebody else my problems, because I've been doing that my whole life. Telling you about me, 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 me. You know, I'm an alcoholic. I'm self-obsessed. I'm self-centered, and really, you know, I love to hear about you, but let's talk about me, okay? So I never got past a 5th step, you know, and I actually would really prefer to share with you, you know, what's happened. I did work the steps all the way through. I have worked them all the way through a couple times now, several times now, actually. And I have to tell you, I want to get to the real nitty-gritty. And I have to tell you that, first of all, that on the 9th step, for the very first time I made an amends, I was rocketed into the next dimension. as the words were coming out of my mouth, I was rocketed into the next dimension. It was an experience that I will never forget. And every time I do an amends, I have a deeply profound experience. And I have to tell you that every time I've worked the steps all the way through, my concept of God changes. Amazingly enough, it takes on a whole new vision for me. You know, it's really funny. I like to say that my life is really great. My life is amazing. My life is amazing. You know, I don't have what I think I should have at 20 years of sobriety and 42 years old. I do not have what I think I should have in the way I think it should be. But my life is amazing because my perception of it has changed and is amazing. You know, what's important for me to tell you is how my life is today. My life's amazing. I have survived, because I'm sober, I have survived 2 marriages and 2 divorces. You know, I can make light of my first divorce, and we're good friends, and everything's great. But I have to tell you that the second divorce for me, I heard a speaker at Brentwood Thursday night once share that divorce is like having the Empire State Building shoved up your ass 1 brick at a time. And I was like, that was it for me. It has been a completely different experience. And you know what? I have not for 1 second wanted to drink or use over it. I've wanted to smoke cigarettes. And I have never smoked a cigarette in my life. And I've wanted to smoke cigarettes. Can you believe that? A cocaine addict who doesn't smoke cigarettes? And I've wanted to smoke cigarettes. God saw fit to think that I could have a child and raise it. You know, in my second marriage, on my 14th sober birthday, I had my daughter. She will be 6 years old on my 20th sober birthday next month. Wow. All I ever wanted was a regular life. Now, I had perceived that to be a normal life. You know, what I thought was normal. See, I'd spent my entire life judging your outsides to my insides, and I felt like a piece of shit my whole life. You know, and for a long time in sobriety, I have to tell you that around 10 or 12 years, about 12 years of sobriety, I actually started to feel like a regular person. If that gives anybody any hope that has less than 12 years of sobriety, I actually started to have a regular life. I started to be able to cope with things that naturally came to me, as it talks about when you work the steps, that my life started to get relatively normal. Not normal, regular. All I'd ever wanted was a regular life. And I have to tell you that I have a regular life today. This is what I've stayed sober so long to have, you know. God thinks I can raise a kid pretty much on my own. I can feed this kid and clothe this kid and read to this child and do homework with this child. And she is so much healthier and well-adjusted now at 6, not even 6, than I am at 42. This is what Alcoholics Anonymous has done for me. It's given me a regular life, and all I ever wanted was a regular life. Sure, shit happens. You know, this was not my plan. It was not my plan to be divorced 2 times. It was not my plan to be a single parent. It was not my plan to, you know, not have a bunch of kids and a big house and a fancy car and all that kind of stuff. It's not my plan. And sometimes I have a really difficult time listening to God. There are times that I ask God, I beg God to shout at me with a bullhorn because I can't hear him. Please shout. I do my best shouting at God. God doesn't care if I shout. God loves me no matter what. God understands that I'm human and that I get pissed off and I feel left out and not a part of and not good enough and broke and all that shit. God knows that. It's okay. My God thinks it's okay. Like I said, my God's changed a lot, you know. I'd also like to tell you that I am also a grateful member of Al-Anon. That has also saved my life. That's brought me to a whole new level of recovery. I heard in a meeting the other day that if you're in one program, you're in denial. I just thought that was a fucking riot. You know? I love Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, I wouldn't... You know, it's funny. I don't think I'd be dead. I think I'd be stuck out there with my heart beating in that world, in that nightmare, alive, still using. I don't think I'd be fortunate enough to be dead. I've known a lot of people that have died since I've been sober. My Monday night home group meeting in 2005, I think there were 6 people that died in 1 year. You know, they kept thinking that there was a revolving door around here. You know, you don't have to relapse. You don't have to do that. It's a choice. When I got here, it was the only place I'd ever just felt okay. I didn't want to leave, you know? It was a sad thing. It's just not a revolving door. You don't necessarily get another chance. My life is amazing because it's just a regular life. I can't emphasize that enough because, you know, it's funny, you know, things happen to non-alcohol, put it that way, non-alcoholic people. The same shit happens to us. We're not any different than other people out there once we get sober, once we get clean, once we actually show up every day for a job. And I have to tell you, I don't call in sick today unless I'm sick. Now, I don't know about you. That's huge for me. I haven't called in sick in 19 years and 11 months unless I'm sick. You know? I am a committable woman. That's not to say I need to be committed. I am a committable woman. I'm good for it, for everything I commit to. I commit to friends. I'm responsible. I have integrity. I am kind. I am loving. And I am loyal to the bone. And that is because I'm sober. That is because of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've had some really strange experiences the last couple of months. I've had God shouting at me with a bullhorn for the last couple months. And the first 3 things that happened to me in a matter of 1 week, I kept going, no, 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 no. Just like I did when I was new. I kept thinking, no, it's not supposed to look this way. It's supposed to look this way. My perception of how this should look. And God kept going, And I had several more occurrences. I had probably 9 things happen to me in a span of 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, that were so mind-blowing that I could not deny that God was ever present in my life, screaming at me with a bullhorn. You know, I kept wanting to rub against the grain and go, no, 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 it should look like this. And I was in a workshop on a Monday night a few weeks ago, and from a sober woman. It was not a sober workshop. The woman speaking was 37 years sober. Pistol, that woman. She started to share something, and sitting in this group of where there's only half the people probably were in recovery, half are normal people, regular people. I like that word regular much better. Regular people. She started to talk about something that was deeply, well, I'd heard her say it dozens of times before, but for some reason I'd finally heard her say it. You know when we hear that? We hear something 100 times and then all of a sudden we hear it. I heard her say something. And it was like she took a baseball bat, cracked me across the head, and I went flying out of my chair. And I went home, and even though this was a non-recovery thing that I was at, I went home and I started writing, and I wrote till 2 o'clock in the morning, and I wrote an amends letter to my ex-husband. Not this one, the other one. I made amends to you. Long time ago. And I wrote this amends letter, and you know what happened for me was, you know, we make amends to be free. I make amends to be free. Kind of still a little selfish. Kind of still a little about me. I make amends to be free. I heard this woman talking, and I knew immediately that I owed restitution to another human being for my behavior. This wasn't about me. This was about him, and this was about that I owed him this. I needed to do this because I saw me and my behavior. And I went home and I wrote this amends letter and I gave it to him the next day. And I have to tell you that as a result of that, it's amazing what happens when we do amends. I tell the women that I sponsor, that when you make amends, it's a little weird for a couple of weeks. You're not quite sure how you feel for a couple of weeks. Just like when you do a 4th step, I have the women that I sponsor sit on it once they think they're finished for a couple of weeks because other stuff comes up. And I haven't done a 9th step in a really long time. And I made this amends, and weird shit started to happen for me. All the weird stuff that was going on in my life was happening the 3 weeks prior to this. But what happened was something was happening inside of me. I have to tell you, the sun rose again inside of me. And I was raw and naked and the purest self that I ever have been for the 2 weeks following. Mind you, I didn't stop crying for the 2 weeks following, but that was all part of the experience, you know. I knew when I started feeling all this stuff that it was about me growing, but that wasn't my intention going in. My intention going in was I knew that I needed to make restitution to another human being. And it was a deep, and is a deep, profound spiritual experience that was of the white light variety, I like to believe. It has changed me. It has changed me one day at a time forever. And I'm so grateful to be sober. This is the last house on the block, and we don't end up in Alcoholics Anonymous at the bottom of the barrel by accident. You know, I love my life. I love what you guys have given me, and I never for one day in the last 19 years and 11 months have ever wished I could just have a glass of wine with dinner. I just don't. And I'm so grateful for that, and I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for letting me share.